Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview, not only for this upcoming weekend, which these numbers will be updating over the course of the week, over the next day or two, but we also have some long-term numbers now for a movie that I know everyone is excited for, which of course is The Woman King, which I'm sure has not had any historical liberties taken with it at all. Or as also I like to call The Woman King, Black Panther Wakanda Forever Part 2? Anyway, with all that being said, before we go any further, please make sure you smash that like button, lap that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification on. That way you know every time the video or live stream goes live on the channel. And also I want to start off just by thanking everybody for the support for my nuking of my social media accounts. I know that it is not necessarily the most popular of the decisions, but I just nuked my Minds, Gab, and Truth social accounts just the other day, and I'm planning to nuke my Instagram and Twitter accounts probably sometime today as well. So if you still have not accessed the Discord server, you still can. I have information on those platforms still, and also if you check out the top link in the video description on YouTube, it'll bring you to my link tree, and if you click on the Discord icon, it will bring you to the Discord server. I'm going to update that too. That way there's an actual dedicated button that says Discord, because I know some people have had some trouble finding it. But without all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some of these movies, because one that I did not see on the release schedule before, but I do find interesting, is that there is going to be a re-release of Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. That's right. One of the few movies that people actually defend in the Disney era of Star Wars, the one movie that I feel like most people will come out of the woodwork to say, well, you know, they have at least got that one. Hey, they at least got that one correct. Typically is Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, though I do think that that movie has also soured on people, especially in the current age of Disney Star Wars in the post, not just Last Jedi era, but also the post Rise of Skywalker era, amidst, of course, the plethora of Star Wars content on Disney+. But before going into that, let's talk about The Invitation, which is set to come out this coming weekend. The Invitation is expected to make somewhere between $7 and $12 million in its three-day opening, with a domestic total between $17 and $32 million. So not all that much money, but The Invitation likely will not be a very high-cost movie, as it is a horror film. That being said, right now there are no indications of how much money this movie actually cost. Looking at the cast, doesn't look like they have any major stars. Obviously, Nathalie Joanne Emmanuel is the one that I know the best, because she was Missandre in the Game of Thrones series, and I'm sure that I could probably recognize maybe a couple of the other people from other things, but that's basically the biggest thing. And this one is going to be an interesting one, because it apparently is inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula book. So it'll be interesting to see just how many adaptations they end up taking with it. You know, how many liberties. The trailer indicates that they're taking a lot of liberties with it and kind of taking it their own. And it makes it very questionable about whether or not they're going to be actual vampires, or whether or not they're just going to be, humans that drink blood in some type of cult-like fashion. It'll be interesting, to say the very least, though. And so, again, whether or not it makes any money is going to be up to anyone's guess. But as you can see, no budgets are being reported anywhere. And even though Wikipedia is not a very valid source when it comes to when they add specifically citations, their citations are usually reliable, or at least usually credible to a certain extent. Collider, of course, not necessarily being the most credible. But I bet about some bland news about its adaptation being an adaptation, I would say that they probably are right there. But this is also typically where I go to find, okay, who is reporting what budgets, because normally there's a range that can come out, and again, some sources I think are more reliable than others. So The Invitation, no budget being reported yet for the movie, but based on the fact that it is a horror film, it does seem to be limited to one location. It seems very likely then that this film probably did not cost all that much money. So 17 to 32 million domestically, not adding in international numbers, means it could still probably make its money back. It seems like one of those films that typically would come out in October and just make money by default by costing very little and coming out in October, when a lot of people are more prone to go see horror films, or more, prone to see scary films during the month. It is interesting, though, to see that those numbers have been trending downward, and that's probably because some of the more recent films that have come out in theaters have not been doing nearly as well, which I think just goes to show you that a lot of the box office prognosticators, as well as Hollywood, don't really know what people want yet. It's just like they're not quite understanding the formula. Films like Top Gun Maverick, for instance, where it's not that people wanted to see a Top Gun sequel, it's people wanted to go to a movie, be blown away, by visual effects that were not just CGI green screen, and wanted to have just a good story, fun story to boot. And that's why that film, I think, is doing as well as it is. And so, again, Invitation looking like it'll be okay if it has a smaller budget, but we'll have to wait and see what that budget actually is. As I mentioned at the very beginning, Rogue One: A Star Wars Story is apparently getting a re-release. It's getting released in just 150 screens and is expected to make a whopping $500,000 to $1 million. This is one that I'm actually interested to see because it's an IMAX re-release. And I kind of hope that this film comes in well under those projections, because not to hate on Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, because at least they do have characters like K2SO voiced by the amazing Alan Tudyk, who I can at least say, hey, Alan Tudyk's awesome. But the rest of the story is pretty bland. The main character is uninspiring, right? There really isn't a lot to the story other than that Darth Vader scene, which is usually what people go to, right? Is, oh, that Darth Vader scene, or, the two friends that are very reminiscent of a classic Japanese anime or a classic Japanese, story, even though that's not the case at all as far as their own backgrounds are concerned. It is just something, though, where it's just kind of blah. It's just there, and hey, it'll be interesting to see just how many people actually show up for that IMAX re-release. I think more people are interested in the IMAX re-release for things like Jaws, which we don't have any numbers on yet. And that's because we're still a little too far out, and because this film is, ages old, they're not going to be able to probably have any predictions on this for quite a while. You'd also have, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home, the more fun stuff version, which I'm sure will make a little bit of extra money for them. Barbarian is another film which I find to be a little bit interesting. The trailer is definitely, again, horror. Again, this is the kind of the standard. That's why I said, seems like we're kind of going into this January motif, as it were, where we're getting these random horror films that are going to cost very little money. Again, no actual production budget has been actually mentioned so far for this movie as of the recording of this video, similar to the last one, but it is interesting nonetheless to see Justin Long, especially. He shows up in a lot of these random movies, so maybe there will be some creepiness to it that will be worth seeing. Bill Skarsgård, who is notorious for, basically reviving the role of Pennywise in a very creepy modern fashion, and I think he did a pretty good job with it, even though I do prefer, obviously I do prefer the classic TV version of it, just because, it is what it is, and Tim Curry is amazing. But I think that Bill Skarsgård actually did a pretty good job with his portrayal of Pennywise the Clown. So having him in the film already makes me think, okay, he's got to be the bad guy, right? He's got to be the person that is going to end up being the really creepy dude, because that's kind of what he's become known for. Maybe not. Maybe this will be his chance to shine in a different role, in a different setting. But anyway, Barbarian does look somewhat interesting, but once again, likely a very, very low budget film. And so it's projected $9 to $14 million opening, $22 to $37 million worldwide total is not likely going to... is not likely going to be a big miss for them. 20th Century Studios, which is under, of course, the Disney label, probably will be able to make its money back on this one if I had to guess. And again, we'll get closer to this one. As we get closer to this one, we'll finally get a production budget in the coming weeks, and we'll be able to actually break down exactly how well or not well that film will do. And then that leads us to, again, there's some other films set to come out, but really, again, there's really not a whole lot of stuff coming out over the next month or two. So I guess the next big major release, as some people would like you to think, is The Woman King. That's right, The Woman King, even though only men can be kings and women can be queens, doesn't mean that a queen can't rule. But it does mean that, again, I don't quite understand the title. I'm sure that there's some historical thing that some person who's going to get triggered by what I'm saying about all of this is going to, give me a very long speech about, or a very long explanation for. Either way, I don't really care about that, because ultimately this film is expected to make $16 to $21 million in its opening weekend, 42 to $67 million in the entirety of its run. And if you actually look at the trailer, it seems that they had a lot of stunt teams on this film. It seems that they used mostly practical effects, so it looks like there may have been some CG usage as well. But it does seem like a more epic type story, and so I could see the budget for this film being higher than what one might expect it to be. And even though it is coming from Sony, which has been winning as a company, Sony and Paramount have really been some of the most successful studios as far as how much they spend on their projects versus how much they get back in return. It just, I don't know. Everything about the trailer just screams, one, okay, so I just feel like I'm watching a second trailer for Wakanda Forever in a lot of ways, because what does Wakanda Forever focus on? That's right, the female warriors that are, the part of the Kingsguard. Okay, what does this film focus on? Oh, they focus on female warriors who are a part of essentially the Kingsguard. So as you can see, there's a lot of these similarities that exist there. And also, apparently, this is supposed to be based, it says 19th century Africa kingdom of Dahomey, Woman King follows an all-female group of warriors, the Agoji, who protect the kingdom. The group's general, Naniska, trains a new generation of warriors to fight against an enemy who wants to destroy their way of life. Of course, that enemy happens to be the white man. So it's, again, another one of those, colonialism bad stories, which is something I feel like we just have gotten a lot at this point, especially, not just being pushed in movies and pop culture and things like that, but of course, in our education system. And so I don't really trust Hollywood to be telling that story. I don't think that Hollywood is going to be able to focus on the nuances of these stories. It's not going to be able to focus on the nuances of the fact that there were many slaves that were held by the people of these African nations, and just the fact that this was something that was in many ways perpetuated by the people themselves, right? So again, we could talk about how evil it is, no matter where it is, no matter who is doing it. But if we're not going to tell the full story, then I think that is something that is going to be, controversial to say the very least, and something that I think is going to be worth calling out. So we don't have a budget yet for this film as recording this movie, but I could see this film costing just a little bit more. And to be honest, I don't know how this film is going to end up doing, because again, just based on the trailer, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not saying that this is not real, that this people did, they didn't exist, right? Because apparently this is based off a historical group of warriors. But I looked at some of the moments and I was like, okay, so you have one moment where one of the female warriors and one of the male warriors have basically a spear in them and they're pushing up against each other, and then the male backs out. And it's like, could that happen? Yes, but also we have to take into account things like biological differences in mass, which of course you can't talk about in Hollywood today or anywhere, it seems. So I don't know. I just, I look at the trailer, I think, okay, First thing that comes to my mind is, okay, Wakanda Forever Part 2 is what it seems like. And then the second thing is, okay, how much of this is going to be based in historical fact, and how much of this is going to be Hollywood trying to perpetuate a narrative? Because that's what Hollywood is obsessed with today, is really just perpetuating narratives, pushing things that, again, may be based in some truth and might actually be an interesting story to boot, but because we can't really rely on either historical accuracy or them not telling it through a very, very myopic lens, it just makes me want this movie to fail. I don't know. As I said, the reason why would be because of the fact it just seems that it's not going to be authentic in that aspect. It's not going to be authentic in its retelling of story and retelling of history, and it's going to seem to try to push more so agendas. And so because of that, I am not surprised, or would not be surprised, if this is the range that it ends up being for the movie. But because I think the film might cost a lot more than what it might seem to be, I could see this film costing north of $60 to $100 million, for instance, just because, again, of just the vast scope of the production design, or at least seemingly the production design and things like that. So that can obviously build up cost over time, which would mean this film would have to make a heck of a lot more than this if it was going to ever hope to break even. So once we have those numbers, I will do that breakdown. But what do you think? Do you think this movie's going to come out and open to 1621? Because that's not really a very large opening. Again, this is going to be Sony TriStar Pictures, so much more of a, I guess, an independent feel. So I could see this film coming out around 3,000 screens or so, maybe similar to what we would see for a film like 3,000 Years of Longing, or even The Invitation, where it's a wide release, but it's not the widest of all releases. They're not expecting it to be a massive moneymaker. But do you think that this film might find some success? Let me know your thoughts about that, or anything else I mentioned about the film as well. Maybe is there something that you happen to know about this specific story that it's already getting wrong from the trailers, or how they're at least portraying it in the trailers? Because as we all know, sometimes a story is put out in the trailers that ends up not being the case of the actual movie itself. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about that, or any of the other films that I talked about in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash the like button, lap the fire button, and honestly, again, thank you so very much for your love and support with the social media purge. And again, today is going to be pretty much the last day. I plan to have this be the last day for Twitter and for Instagram. So if you've not gotten to the links there, again, you can also find them here on YouTube as well. But if you're wondering where I am or why my accounts disappeared, again, this is a choice for my mental and spiritual state. So I'm not being nuked by anyone else but by my own choice and by my own hand. So anyway, thank you again for the support. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Keeper of the Bifrost and Chosen of Valhalla members over on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. Starting off with my Patreon supporters, we got Chris from the 80s, who you can check out on YouTube, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, The Modern Major General Story, Father Luca Illick, Orange Hat Reviews, who you can also check out on YouTube, Rosetta Allen, whose YouTube channel's name is Eagle Rider, Stan Andrian, Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel, and the Empress of the Universe, Tina B, who you can check out on her show that she does with the amazing Stephanie B, my Valkyrie, on a show called Soup to Nuts on Tina B's channel. Also to my Subscribestar peeps, we got Matt317, who you can support over on Twitch, same name, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK-Man, who you can support over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, we got Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player? We have UAB Mad Dog Mike Jackson for the win, Brett D90, and Robert Barnes, who most people should know about at this point, so go support him over at InfoWars, YouTube, and all the other locations that he is at. But if you want your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream, check out that top link in the video description. Finds out all the places that you can follow me on social media, and also all the various platforms that you can support the channel, which include not only shoutouts, but also access to giveaways of 4K titles, Blu-rays, tons of other stuff like that, digital codes, and then also a way to get access to being featured on the channel once a month for the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we're talking about movies, pop culture, and pretty much anything the Chosen want to talk about. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the video description. There's also access to a podcast that I do with John the Flick Pig Flickinger once or twice a month. And don't worry, if you were wondering where the July episode is, because of scheduling conflicts, especially with John, we were not able to get that done, but we will have 2 episodes this month to make up for it, so don't you worry about that. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.